Hi guys, my name is Mayana and welcome to Core. Today I'm going to talk about the sequel to Powerless, which is called Reckless. I wanted this video to be just like a really low chill video. I just finished Reckless. I low-key feel like it gave me a headache because I finished this right before me and my brother were gonna go see Deadpool, and then I watched Deadpool and my head started hurting. And every time I think about this book, my head just starts hurting. So I think it's the book's fault. People loved my Powerless video, and so I decided to follow up and do Reckless. And I thought that it was gonna be, and this is my own personal mistake for thinking it was gonna be a better book, but surely this book was a prank. Surely this book, in its high rating, because it has a 1.3 star on Goodreads, surely this book in its high rating was a prank. I genuinely felt like this book was rage bait. I feel like this book was baiting me to be mad so that it could gain monetization from it, because there's no fucking way that this is a real published book. And in my last video, I said I want to read this because the first book was self-published and this book is traditionally published. So I felt like, oh, because it's traditionally published, it was going to be better. Wrong. It's not better. I also am reading this book because Jemiah told me that I should read this. Okay, Jemiah also was the person who told me to read the first book. So what did we learn from this video? Do not trust Jemiah with my book recommendations. Okay, if you don't know Jemiah is my friend. And we have two completely different tastes. We sometimes overlap with our tastes. We sometimes have the exact same taste, sometimes we don't. But yeah, I read this one because Jemiah said that I should. She said that this book explains things better, it goes more in depth into things, which I thought was insane, because I felt like, why would you not explain that all in the first book? I don't think that just because something is a first book that it needs to have all the lore, because we don't know the world even as we read the book. So I feel like I feel like you should be learning the lore throughout the series, but you should never be backtracking on lore that you previously mentioned. I got a few comments on my last video saying, oh my gosh, it's like Psych. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. I don't know how, because I've never seen Psych. And I was on Discord and I was talking to one of my good friends, Levi, and I was explaining to him a plot. I was literally giving him a breakdown of my rant video, because I literally started talking about the book and I was like, oh yeah, I just uploaded this video, it's doing pretty well. And then I just started ranting about it. So when I started ranting, Levi was like, wait, this sounds exactly like Psych. And I was like, oh, I've never seen it. And he was like, yeah, it's about this guy who pretends to be psychic because he wants to be a part, I forgot what he said, he wants to be a part of something. And so his dad taught him how to pretend to be psychic. And I'm like, that's literally Powerless. And then Levi was like, yeah. And I was like, there's even this scene where it's kind of like the Hunger Games, where they're being interviewed, and so the interviewer's like, show us your power. And so she picks out one guy and she notices that his leg is dirty, he has a smile on his face, and he has his hand in his pocket. So she's like, oh, you were about to you just got engaged or whatever. And he was like, there's a scene in Psych where he notices, he's at lunch with someone, and he notices from the table across from him that the guy was really nervous, and he kept checking his pocket, and he was sitting across from a girl. And I was like, oh my god, this is literally this lady, she has, I feel like she doesn't have a single scene that is her own. It's almost as if she's like, oh, well, maybe if I take things that are inspired by other things, people won't notice or something. I don't know. There's no fucking way that that's a coincidence. And she's not realizing how people are gonna think hey, this is plagiarism. Another funny thing that happened is, right after I read Powerless, I started watching this anime called Mashle, because I'm in my anime and manga era. So I started watching this anime called Mashle Muscles and Magic. And it's literally a fucking parody of Harry Potter, okay? People are going to tell you, oh, this is One Punch Man and Harry Potter. And I haven't seen One Punch Man, so I can't speak on that. It's not like Harry Potter. It is Harry Potter. And it's so funny because it's about this boy who grew up in this world, who everyone in this world has magic except for him. And if you don't have magic, you're done for, right? And so he's super, super strong, and he's always working out. So he just pretends that he has magic through using his muscle. And so he just wants to live with his father in peace. He just has to go to this magical school and get out of it, and then he can live in peace with his father. And so while watching this, I couldn't help but connect Powerless and Mashal, because it's about two people who don't have powers, who are living in this world of people who do have powers. And I was just thinking about how this silly little parody show did that so much better than Powerless did, because instead of doing like this system that doesn't make sense where people have magical powers but they're the ones fighting. There's people who have magical powers and there's people who don't. But instead of making the people who don't fight, you have the people who do have magic fight, and it doesn't make any sense because you're essentially killing off your most powerful people. Whereas in Mashal, it's like, no, if you don't have powers, you are seen as a weakling. You are out of here. Like, goodbye. And I just thought it was really funny that this parody anime was doing this plot line so much better than something that wasn't supposed to be taken as satire, to be honest. So going into this book, I kept thinking, like, it'll be fine. It can't be that boring because there are people who have powers. And even though I didn't like Powerless, I enjoyed, like, the powers that people had I almost said last season, the last book, and, like, how she utilized them and the powers that she came up with. There are no fucking powers in this book. So the only thing that I thought would hold me over didn't. We didn't have that. Honestly, it's one thing to write a book that's bad, but to write a book that is boring and bad should literally be a crime. Like, this should be illegal. Let's actually get into this review. I feel like I don't have to say this, but this is going to be spoiling Reckless. So if you haven't read Powerless and you're interested in reading it, maybe don't watch this video. But I feel like most people who are watching this are people who, like, haven't read Powerless and don't care and don't want to read Reckless, or they have read Powerless and they don't want to read Reckless, or maybe just want to watch this support, which if that's the case. This book starts 2 to 3 days after the last book, and it actually doesn't state that, I don't think. I just assume so because of how they were talking in the time frame, but whatever. So Peyton is on the run, and there's a scene where she's hiding in her old house, which is like, you just killed the king and everyone's looking for you. And the first place that you think to go is your childhood home. And you don't think that that's going to be a place where people think to look for you. But whatever. So then Kai finds her because, Kai is looking for her because Kit wants her to from the last book. He can't see her, but he knows that she's there. And she's, like, hiding in, like, this, like, closet or whatever. And he's, like, talking to her. Even though, like, he doesn't know for sure that she's there, but she is, so I mean, he's not wrong. And then he leaves, and then he sets the house on fire, and so she ends up running out and jumping on, like, the roof, I think. And so he sends one of his men after her, and she kills him. Yeah, so they, like, this starts this, like, game of, like, cat and mouse between them two. And given that Kai killed her dad and she killed his, these characters should absolutely hate each other. Like, Peyton spent so much of the last book thinking about her dad just for her to be like, oh, well, I hate you, but I can't. Like, I should hate you, but I can't. It just reminds me of this whole, like, situation reminds me when for all the Vampire Diaries girlies, sorry, it's fall. It's, like, not fall, but fall is tempting me. And so my favorite thing about fall is rewatching the Vampire Diaries. The Vampire Diaries, Buffy, Gossip Girl, Gilmore Girl, Pretty Little Liars, like, all those, like, school type fall shows or whatever are, like, on my mind right now. But so it just reminds me of in the Vampire Diaries where Damon kills Elena's brother, Jeremy, and Elena is, like, freaking out, but Jeremy has, like, this ring on his finger where this ring, like, you're not really dead when someone kills you, or something like that. And so but Damon didn't know that. So Elena is supposed to hate Damon for what he did to her brother. And then it's like, oh, okay, well Jeremy had the ring on his finger the whole time, but it's like Damon didn't know that, and he just pretended like he did. Like, everybody was like, oh my gosh, like, luckily Jeremy had this ring on his finger, and Damon's like, haha, yeah, like, I totally knew that when I snapped his neck, like, absolutely. And it's like, no, you didn't, girly. It just reminds me, like, this whole, like, Peyton and Kai remind me of that, where it's like, oh my gosh, I should hate you because you killed someone important to me, but it's like, you're pulling, and it's not giving. I mean, I didn't think it gave in the Vampire Diaries, but it's not even giving like how it should have been, like how it did in the Vampire Diaries. I was a Bonnie and Damon shipper, so nothing really gave to me how it should have gave, in my opinion. But that's not what we're here for. There's a scene where Kai is reporting to Kit, and Kai tells Kit how Peyton stabbed and killed one of the guys. And then Kai goes, she has a tasty habit of killing people. And I'm so confused at this point because I'm like, she's only killed like 2 people and she regrets both of them. And it's like, are we getting the same person that the book is trying to convey her as? Because Kai is trying to convey her as like this like murderous badass girl, and then she's just like this scared little bunny in a field of snakes that has to do what she has to do. And it's like, what Kai tells us she is versus what we get from her POV are not the same thing here. Yeah, so then Peyton, she's on her way to go to where the ordinaries are, and it's called Door. So then some guy finds her and carries her all the way to the city. So now she's amongst her people, the powerless people. But then the guy ends up realizing that he notices her because of that damn silver hair, which is like, surprise. And so he's like, hey girlie, your face is actually plastered all over the town and everyone's looking for you, and if we bring you back, we get a reward. So I don't remember how she got out of that situation because it was really hard for me to read this book. Like, I spent several days reading this book and then I would stop and I'd be like, this is so fucking boring, I cannot continue. So then I would like stop, and so a lot of what happens in here I don't remember. Like, some, like, I don't like, the point of this vlog is for me to convey you information. So there will be like little small details that I don't remember, and it's because I would literally be like, I am so fucking bored, and then I would stop reading, and then I would come back like 3 days later and I wouldn't write in my notes. So then I would have to, it was a lot. So yeah, and the guy also tells Peyton that Kit wants her dead or alive, which isn't necessarily true because Kit told Kai that he wanted Peyton alive. So I don't know why the guy said yeah. It was like, yeah, so they want you. It's like Lauren Roberts just wanted to put the iconic dead or alive line in there, and she like forgot that like Kit wants her alive, or maybe that's not conveyed to the kingdom. But that's gonna be very dangerous because you just told Kai that you wanted her alive. So imagine somebody bring her back dead. What were you gonna do then? But whatever. There's a scene where a person, and Kai is like ordering food, and the person was like, no. So then Kai was like, why? And then the guy was like, I don't like your kind. And I had a moment where I like literally, I had my Kindle, and I literally like, I'm like reading on my Kindle. I read that line. I'm like looking at the camera, like the invisible camera. I like set it down and I go, because it just felt like, but I'm just like, the you people was crazy. Like, it kind of triggered me a little bit. I was like, oh. Also, I noticed in this book, everybody talks the same. Like, ironically, the reason I noticed this is because somebody said probably, but they spelled it probably, so Prolly. And I realized that was the most difference in language that I had gotten from any of these characters. So then I really sat back and I was like, wait, these characters all talk the same. Like, not even just like the POVs, because Peyton and Kai's POV read very the same, which I'll talk about like later. But also just like in general. And I'm no dialect coach and I don't have like a degree in language or whatever, but I am Black, and I just feel like if you're gonna have characters like the ordinaries who are pushed out and they aren't welcome and they're hated and they're like pushed into being poor, and then you have characters like the elites who are like rich and they're powerful, like figuratively, like literally and figuratively, and then also they're just like treated as like they're really special, because these two are from like two different like places, it would just make more sense for them to linguistically like talk different and like have different like dialect. But I'm not gonna like, that's not something that like I'm writing about in this book being like, oh, this should happen. I'm just saying I think that would make more sense. But also I think that if you don't study that enough, then it could become very problematic. So like that's not an issue that I have in this book. I just picked up on it. I think it would be a good idea, because then you could have had like this scene where like Peyton would have had to learn how to speak like how the elite speak, like very quickly, and then once she gets amongst her people in this book, like she has to like go back to talking like that. And like, but also like I feel like if you, I mean, Lauren Roberts is a white author, so I feel like that's probably not something that like crosses her mind often. It's not something that like she probably has to think about if she doesn't surround herself by like people of color. Maybe that's not something that she notices. I don't know. I don't know her tea. I'm just saying like I know how y'all like to get on here. So then there's like a cage fighting underground scene, which reminds me of the scene in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man where he like puts on this rinky-dink spider suit and like covers his face. Also Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. The only Spider-Man they don't do that in is Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But you know, in Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, when Spider-Man needs to get money, so he starts like cage fighting. That's what this scene kind of reminded me of, but like not in a cool way. And yeah, she like puts the scarf over her head to like cover her silver hair, and then she's also calling herself Shadow, which like this can't be for real. Like it's like every time I read something in this book, I'm like, this is fucking corny. Like this is corny, bitch, but whatever. Kai runs into the girl that he saved from the last book, and somehow the girl from the last book just takes him to cage fighting, and guess who's there fighting? My camera overheated, so I had to take a little snack break, but I'm back. So Kit gets his own POV, and this one really confused me because already in this book, it is so hard to be able to tell like who's who. Like obviously the book, it'll tell you like chapter 4, Kai, chapter 5, Peyton, chapter 5. Like it'll tell you who you're reading. But sometimes when reading this book, I would get so bored that I would just leave and I would turn on my phone and I would get on TikTok, and then I would literally mid-chapter would stop reading and get on TikTok, and now I would even just watch like 2 TikToks and I'd be like, all right, bet, I'm going back. I would go back to the book and I'd be like, who am I reading again? And now I have to like click on a chapter because there's no way to distinguish. Like obviously there's a way, but like when you're reading it, there's nothing that distinguishes these characters from each other because they read very similar, especially like when they're just like in their head. Basically they end up finding each other in that little underground cage fighting ring thing, and they have like this back and forth banter moment that is supposed to be like really like good, but I don't think any of the banter in this series is good. Like I'm sorry, like I'm a sucker for like good romances. Like if the romance was good, I don't want people to think like I'm just hating on this just because I already don't like the book. If the romance was good, I would tell you, I'd be like, yeah, God, the romance ate. Like, and Powerless, that was at one point in the beginning when I thought the romance was going to be good. But the way that they talk to each other, it's like, it's not giving to me. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand why people are like, yeah, the book was bad, but the romance was good. No, it wasn't. It's not enemies to lovers. When one person is interested in the other person, it's not enemies to lovers. It's enemy to lover, maybe, but not enemies to lovers. And then also the banter is just really fucking like corny, and you can tell the author tries very hard, like in these moments to like really give. And I don't think that she tries. Like I don't know, maybe if it flowed out better, then like I would fall for it, but I just feel like she tries too hard. They end up kissing not even 100 pages into this book. Mind you, just before that, they were arguing, and Kit was like, fuck. Kai was like, you killed my dad. And then Peyton was like, you killed my dad. And then Kai was like, what? Who? When? When was this? And she was like, 5 years ago. And he was like, 5 years ago? 5 years ago, I killed the first person I've ever killed before. And then blah, 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 blah. And then they kiss. It was like 90 pages on my on my Kindle. What kind of fucking enemies to lovers is this? I'm gonna need authors to go to enemies to lovers school. You can't just be like, oh yeah, this is enemies to lovers, and then also have like this character be like romantically interested in another character, and then also have the other character not give a fuck about them. Like enemies to lovers is when they both like really hate each other to the point where they want to kill each other. And I personally think a good enemies to lovers is if they actually try to kill each other or even attempt to kill, or hey, maybe they even do kill each other. Maybe this is a fantasy book where they regenerate and they're killing each other over and over again. You know? But if one character is like, oh, this bitch, but they're like, oh, fuck this bitch, but she intrigues me. It's not enemies to lovers. And if the other character is just kind of like, he's here, like, I don't hate him, he's here, like, it's like, it's not enemies to lovers. Basically, after all of this, nothing happens, which is crazy because nothing was already happening in this book. Okay, everything that I talk about in this book is just me trying to like keep this video going, because literally nothing's going on here. Okay, we don't get the cool superpowers. Also, none of the characters from the last book were mentioned, so we still don't know if they're dead or not, which is so crazy because Peyton killed like one person and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I killed this person, I'm such a bad person, like, I just can't get over this, like, blah 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 blah. But we don't know. Whatever. So then Kai changed himself to Peyton. Don't know why. This is one of the moments where I read it and then I stopped reading it like for the night and I just went on about my fucking day. So I can't tell you why he changed them together, but he did. And now it's forced proximity. And to add to the soup of a million tropes that this book already has, they walk around like a fake couple to hide the chains. He put them in. And then also there's a shared bed. There's one bed trope, but they don't share the bed. He sleeps on the floor. Like, she just has all these tropes that she tries to put into like one thing and one series. And it's like, girly, you have time. Like, unfortunately, the series is really popular and like people right now don't know what a fucking good book is because everyone started reading for the first time in 2020, or everyone started rereading for the first time in 2020. And so instead of having a Wattpad phase at the age of 13 like the rest of us, we now have to deal with shitty books and shitty authors. So I can guarantee you that this author is going to have more books, but she writes as if she's never going to write again, which she shouldn't, but we all know she's going to. She writes and she puts all these tropes into one series and one book, and it's like, girly, you have time. And it just reminds me of when my best friend Jake watches reality TV. He puts everything on a wheel and he spins it, and that's how he picks like his next thing that he's gonna watch. And it just reminds me, like, she's like putting all these tropes on the wheel and she just spins it, and it's like, okay, this is the trope we're gonna use now. And the whole wheel is for the book. Like, it's not just like, oh, tropes that she wants to use. No, the whole wheel's like, she's going to use all of these. Okay. They get caught by someone and that person brings them both in because he believes he can get money from both of them, which I'm confused as to why, because why would he get money for Kai when Kai is an enforcer? Like, did somebody tell him that? Did he come up with that on his own? Or is that there's just the author being like, I gotta figure out how to get them both from this situation? Like, I don't know. But he doesn't like get them. So he catches them, but he doesn't like get them and bring them in or anything. But they like, you know, Kai escapes and he pulls her into a gentleman's club. And like, so now Peyton has to like sit on his lap while they do like what fucking ever and try to like hide from these dudes. And this book is so annoying because Kai will be like, you killed my father, and then Peyton will be like, okay, you killed my father, and then he'll be like, and then there was one scene in particular where he was just like, I never claimed to be anything but a monster. But in your head, you've been calling Peyton this like his like murderous queen. Like, he's been calling her all types of like murderous type of people. So you should like, that should already be by default, since like you're excused because you never claimed to be a monster. She should be excused because you keep calling her like murderous. Like, you know who she is, or, you know, quote unquote, you know who she is. But then other than that, like, he just doesn't take responsibility. Like I don't know, like, he started freaking out the moment that Peyton revealed that to him, but it's like he just doesn't take, since then it's just, I don't know, it just feels like it's okay for you to be like, oh, well, you killed my dad, but the moment she brings up that you killed her dad, it's just suddenly like, oh my gosh, well, whatever, like, whatever. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel healthy to me, but whatever. And then Kai is telling Peyton about his sister that nobody knew he had because she died at a young age, and it is revealed that when someone with power has a kid with someone who doesn't have powers, the child has powers but is very like dulled, and they're called mixes. Basically, they spend all this time running or whatever, and Peyton ends up finding her father's journal, which reveals a lot of information. So it reveals that there was never really a disease, which is like, girl, that was kind of obvious because they referred to it as the plague. And it's like, what were they going to call it if there was a second one? The second plague? Like, I mean, I guess, but it just kind of was obvious that there was never really a disease to begin with. And this is all revealed because the king really wanted ordinaries gone. And like I said, it makes sense because he wanted the ordinaries gone and he hates them. So he blamed the disease on the ordinaries, which makes some things from the first book make sense. But it's like, okay, you hate them enough to blame the plague on them, but you don't hate them enough to make them fight in these trials. You want the elite, but you want the elites to fight in, the people who have powers that you don't hate. It just doesn't make any sense. If you really hated a group of people, you would have made them the ones that fought in whatever. Because the book has nothing to do with the trials. Like, the trials are over. It's not there. You will never be Mockingjay, girly. Let's just say that. The author honestly should have just kept trying to, is the book called Mockingjay? What's the second book in the Hunger Games book called? I don't own them. I should buy those. I should. But, what was I about to say? Fuck. Yeah, but honestly, if you were gonna plagiarize, maybe she plagiarized the second book in the Red Queen, because I didn't get that far. I only read the first book. But she should have just plagiarized the second book in the Hunger Games, because at least that book was cool as fuck. Like, made everybody come back for a second trial. But no, because she wanted to do like the whole, like, never mind. I guess I can see why she didn't do it, but I just feel like if you're gonna plagiarize something, you might as well just go all the way, honey. You might as well just. But she already got plagiarism allegations, so I could see. Anyways, so then it's also revealed that Peyton's dad found an ordinary woman. Like, Peyton's dad basically, like, is a healer, and his dad, and the king wanted him to work for him, and he hired like all the healers because he was trying to like hide something from the people. And basically Peyton's dad ended up falling in love with this ordinary woman, and she ended up getting pregnant, and they ended up dying while she was still pregnant. And the next couple of days after that, there was a baby left on our doorstep, and the baby was Peyton, which, okay, so now we don't even know who Peyton's parents are. Peyton could develop powers in the last book. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she develops powers. I think that would make the book interesting. But I also think that Lauren Roberts is purposely trying to keep these books uninteresting. So maybe not. I haven't brought up Kit's chapters in a while because they're very fucking boring. Nothing happens in them, and it's just him being fucking depressed. And I don't care. I'm already depressed. Why the fuck do I want to read about that? From a book that, whatever. And they're caught. Kai and Peyton are caught for real this time. And Kai's best idea is to just go with it without a fight. He's just like, yeah, I have a plan. Let's just go with it. That's not a plan. And then also, because of what happens afterwards, it's actually the world's worst plan ever, actually. Because they end up going back to the palace, and Kit has like this long scene of him being like, Peyton Gray, do you confess to this, and this? And then Peyton's like, yeah, I do. And then the chapter ends with him telling her to be his bride. And then the epilogue is Kai crashing out mentally because his girlfriend now has to marry his brother. And that's the end of the book. Very lackluster. Honestly, here's how I would have written it. I wouldn't have. I just felt like that was a waste of time, and not in a good way. But my camera's gonna die again. So unlike the last video, I don't have any like thing to put in there like at the end where I talked about like plagiarism and things like that, because this book was useless and boring. So yeah, that's all for this video. I hope that you liked it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.